Welcome back, guys. Today's video covers the 6th, 7th, and 8th episode of the popular anime Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Station Colonel Hughes is at the station to see off Edward and Alphonse, while Armstrong is on guard duty for the brothers. Edward asks if Al made it on the train. Armstrong tells him not to worry because he made sure Alphonse has company during his journey. Sheep count as travel companions, don't they? The train arrives at the station. Armstrong sees a former state alchemist, Marcoh. He used to practice alchemy to help with medical science. Marcoh hears Armstrong and panics. He runs away. Edward decides to go after him. He may know a thing or two about the transmutation of living organisms. Armstrong shows his drawing skills by sketching out Dr. Marcoh. He asks the people around. The people know him as Dr. Marcoh. He seems to be a great doctor helping the village people. The villagers love Dr. Marcoh, so it wasn't that hard to find his place. They go to Dr. Marcoh's place. Marcoh shoots as soon as Ed opens the door. Dr. Marcoh is distressed and believes Ed and Armstrong came to harm him. Armstrong tells him to calm down by throwing Alphonse at him. It's highly effective. Armstrong assures that he had no idea Dr. Marcoh was hiding in this village. The state alchemist searched for him because Marcoh took secret documents with him when he disappeared. Marcoh tells them he was ordered to research something that has taken many lives during the Ishbalan War. Marcoh couldn't continue to take lives anymore. He escaped to this village to help people and atone for his sins. Armstrong asks what was the thing he was researching. Marcoh says he's been researching the Philosopher's Stone. The secret documents were the stones themselves. Ed asks if he had the time. Marcoh brings out a tube containing a red substance and pours it out. He says the Philosopher's Stone can take any shape and can have many names. Edward thinks about the possibilities the stone can create and asks Marcoh to give him his research data. Edward tells Dr. Marcoh about their attempt at human transmutation. But Marcoh refuses to help Edward with research. Edward snaps at Marcoh. Marcoh refuses and tells them to leave. Edward and Armstrong head back to the station. As they are about to leave, Dr. Marcoh stops them to give Ed a note containing where to find the research data. Marcoh hopes it might help them get their bodies back and bids them farewell. Marcoh goes back into his house, only to find Lust waiting there. The boys arrive at Winery's house. Edward introduces Armstrong to his granny. Edward gives the destroyed automail to Winery. Winery beats Edward and Alphonse for ruining her best automail and armor. Edward tells Granny that he has found the location of the Philosopher's Stone, and he hopes that they will fix him quickly. Granny and Winery promise it to fix him in 3 days. Ed goes off to visit his mother's grave. Granny asks Armstrong if the boys are handling themselves correctly. Armstrong asks why Granny treats them like grandsons. Granny says that their father was a good friend of hers. He asks about Winery's parents too. She tells him that both of them died during the Ishbalan War. She offers Armstrong to stay with them. Armstrong asks if the brothers have any home. She tells them the brothers burned the house after the transmutation incident. He is moved by Elrics' story and hugs Ed. "Why are you taking off your shirt, dude?" It's morning and Winery seems to have worked all night. She works all night the next day too. And the next. Finally, she's done making the automail. Winery and her grandma help Ed put on the automail. Winery sure seems to love her work. Finally, after getting his arm back, Ed transmutes and fixes all. Being back to 100%, they plan on heading back to Central to find the stone the next morning. Alphonse thanks Granny and Winery for everything they have done for them. The boys head off in search to find the Philosopher's Stone. Lust burns down the library where Marcoh hid the research data before Edward finds it. Gluttony smells an Ishbalan nearby. Lust and Gluttony plan to eliminate him. Scar makes his way through the sewers. Gluttony and Lust team up on Scar and attack him. Lust's attack causes an explosion. Mustang and the officers head to the site immediately. They find Scar's jacket, but not his body. Mustang orders his officers to clear up the debris and patrol the area until Scar's body is found. Scar seems to have escaped Lust and Gluttony. Lust leaves to inform them about it to her father. Ross and Sergeant Brosh relieve Major Armstrong from his duty and take over the duty of guarding their brothers. They escort the brothers to another library to maybe find clues about the stone. Alphonse finds someone buried under a pile of books. They help her out. Turns out it was Shiska who worked in the library. Ed asks if she remembers any work that mentioned Dr. Macho. Shiska says that she remembers everything, though the actual copies burned in the fire. Shiska makes complete copies of Marcoh's works. The notes seem to be cookbooks containing lists of ingredients. But Ed seems to have an idea. He pays Sheska handsomely for her work and leaves with the notes. Ed believes the cookbooks to be encrypted codes about alchemy. Ed and Al have a hard time deciphering the notes. Sheska comes to thank Edward for his generous payment. Meanwhile, Hughes walks in and talks about how losing the library burned down several criminal records. Sheska seems to remember all the books stored there, including the police records. She is instantly hired by Colonel Hughes. After 10 days of working on the notes, the brothers finally decode it only to find the main ingredient of creating a stone is human life. Multiple human sacrifices need to be made to form one stone. They decide not to tell anyone about the findings. However, Armstrong forces Ross and Sergeant Brosh to tell him about the stones. Edward remembers Dr. Marcoh's words. There's the truth behind the truth. So he thinks there must be more to the stone than meets the eye. They bring out the map of the facilities under the government. Edward speculated that the hidden truth is within the abandoned Laboratory 5 next to the prison. The prison would have provided the alchemists with souls to form the stone. They suspect the government to be involved. Ed and Al sneak into the unused building without telling Ross or Sergeant Brock. The building is heavily guarded despite being abandoned. Ed makes his way through the vents. Meanwhile, two mysterious figures stalk them. One attacks Alphonse. The mysterious masked man reveals himself to be number 66. Meanwhile, Ed finds a transmutation circle. He speculates it to be used for stone transmutation. Number 48 approaches Ed. He's in charge of guarding the lab and he must dispose of Ed. He attacks Ed, but Ed fends off his attacks. 48 seems to be like Alphonse, a soul attached to the armor. 48 tells Ed that he was a mass murderer and he was killed and then transmuted to his armor. 48 shows Ed his seal to give himself a challenge. Mustang tells Hughes that they failed to identify the Scar's body. They speculate him to be dead amongst the decomposed bodies found near the site. Meanwhile, Ed finds himself in a tough spot against 48. Ed needs to defeat 48 before his automail arm gives out. 66 is finding it difficult to defeat Alphonse. Alphonse punches 66's helmet off and finds out he's hollow inside. 66 tells Alphonse about his past. He was a butcher named Barry. He killed 23 people before being killed and transmuted to his armor. Alphonse reveals himself to be the same. 66 claims Alphonse never existed and Ed created all to serve him. Alphonse is shook by his idea. Meanwhile, Ed tricks 48 and takes his helmet out. Ed tries to make 48 tell him about the stones, but he gets attacked by the body. Turns out the body and helmet have two different souls attached to them, 48 and his brother. Ed is backed into a corner. As the body comes to end him, Ed uses one of the Scar's moves to defeat it. 48 tells Ed to end them. But Ed says he's not a murderer and will not kill even if the soul is attached to the armor. Moved by Edwards' words, 48 agrees to tell him everything. Before that could happen, Lust and Envy kills 48 and his brother. Ed tries to defend against Envy and Lust, but his automail breaks. Edward is defenseless. Lust, however, tells Ed that they will allow him to live. Meanwhile, Alphonse and 66's fight comes to an end with Ross and Brock coming to help. Suddenly, the lab starts to collapse. Alphonse tells the sergeant that Ed is still inside. Envy carries Ed to safety and tells the lieutenant to keep an eye on them. During all this, Alphonse is thinking about what 66 said to him. That's all we got today, guys! Like and subscribe for the next recap. Have a great day.